This will be my Outlander Season 7, Episode 15 review, titled Written in My Own Heart's Blood. As always, if you are looking to avoid spoilers from the books or the TV show, please do keep on scrolling. So this is the penultimate episode of Season 7, and then we're going to have a week break in between this episode and the finale. So we have 2 full weeks to decompress from this episode. And I want to first start out by saying there have been a lot of book deviations this season, and especially in this episode. There's plenty of book content, but they also deviated away from the storyline. And I just want to make a friendly reminder that for me personally, and hopefully for you, the book and the show are now 2 different stories. And I know that there's overlap, and I know that at the heart of the show is the original Outlander story, but I think it benefits everyone to really look at these 2 mediums that they're telling this story of Claire and Jamie as 2 different stories, because at this point they really are, and there's only so much from the books that they can convey in the TV show. Not to mention, they started filming Season 7 and didn't know if they were going to get greenlit for a Season 8, so they really had to cram as much of the book plot into this season in a way that felt satisfying to a viewer like you or I. And I don't fault them for having that momentous task thrown at them and then being granted a Season 8 so late in the game. I think they've recovered from what I know was probably a lot of rewrites very well. But I just want to put that disclaimer out there because I can understand how some people would get angry with so many changes, but I think it's worth looking at this again as 2 separate stories. That said, we start this episode off with a really amazing montage from all of the earlier seasons of the show. And I think this is such an effective way to remind viewers of everything that Claire and Jamie have gone through in their relationship and that we've seen on the show, but also bringing back a lot of faces of people that we know they have, either been part of their death in some way or witnessed it. We see Culloden, we see France, we see Coleman Dougal, we get shots from World War II, Blackjack, Fergus as a child, Angus, Myrtha, Stephen Bonnet, like all of these key players that have all been woven into Claire and Jamie's story, and the discussion that Claire is bringing up about how inevitable war and death are. There's a line in her dialogue where Claire says, even people who want to go to heaven don't want to die to get there. And that's actually the name of a chapter in part 5 of Written in My Own Heart's Blood. The last time we had a montage like this, it was when she believed Jamie was dead. So it's also kind of a subtle cue for viewers and a device that they're using again cinematically to kind of clue the viewer into drama ahead. So we get this whole big lead up, and I think the other effective use of this is that there's not really going to be a lot of actual fighting that we witness in the episode, but this montage kind of emulates the feelings that we would have if they did do another epic battle scene. But using these previous ones kind of is just as effective, I would argue. And then we get this incredible title card. So if you pause and zoom in here, Jamie is standing right here and Claire is right there tending to someone on the ground. And it's one of those blink and you'll miss it kind of Easter eggs, which is then heightened by the fact that we see what looks like Frank and Bree standing in front of the painting, looking at Claire and Jamie in history. Now, this is actually a real painting that can be found in New York in a museum, and it's titled Molly Pitcher, which I had mentioned her in a previous review video that I did. But Claire remembers that when Bree was a child, she had a coloring book about the American Revolution, and one of the pages depicted Molly Pitcher, who basically manned a cannon when her husband is injured and was delivering water to the men on the battlefield at the Battle of Monmouth. And Claire is able to piece herself in history because she remembers Molly Pitcher, and that the battle that they're about to partake in is where the image and the coloring book picture stem from and the story stems from. Now, this is not the first Easter egg that involves Frank in this episode. I think obviously this is meant to be him. I don't think this is actually Tobias Menzies, the actor. But him showing Brianna indirectly Claire being a part of history and Jamie being part of it too does come up again later in the episode, and I will point it out when we get to that. Then we see Jamie and Claire waking up on the morning of the battle and Jamie being unable to sleep, something that in the books we hear him say to himself quite often, and Claire also kind of relays to the reader that this is not abnormal for Jamie to be up the night beforehand worrying. And he delivers this beautiful line saying that the only time he's without pain and forgets that his scars are on his back is when he is with Claire in their bed together. And that's actually a passage from book 5 that they reworked and inserted here. He explains to Claire that he's actually been dreaming of his mother, Ellen, and that he saw her in her coffin when he was a child, and that was the first time that he had ever seen death on someone. And Claire and him have this really touching conversation where he's explaining those feelings that were conjured up and how his mother was so young, and that seeing Claire be able to grow old and have gray hairs, which his mother did not have any at the time of her death, brings him a great comfort because that means that she's alive. Now, ironically, people have been pointing out in my comments that this season's wig has far less gray hairs than last season's wig, and I have to agree that that seems to be something that either people are choosing to ignore on the creative side, but her hair should be more gray by now. He also mentions his younger brother who passed away in childbirth with Ellen. His name was Robert, and he was buried with his mother. And I think even though this scene fits kind of well here, I also have to think that this is probably a way to remind everyone about Ellen because of the Blood of My Blood show that will be coming out soon, and maybe stir up some interest in her because Jamie talking about how young she was when she passed, and then we also see Brian later in this episode, is just a friendly reminder that that show is coming. Jamie then delivers this really beautiful line where he asks Claire to come to him, shelter him, heal him. And that's a reworked line of dialogue from the Fiery Cross book 5 as well that I think worked really well here. And then this line that he delivers here where he asks Claire to lay down with her so he can watch her sleep because then he'll be able to wake up and do what must be done. That is a line from Written in My Own Heart's Blood that takes place in this actual timeline of events. So that was another great piece of dialogue that they pulled out and inserted and used in the show. We get the date and location of the battle announcement here, and we can also see that they are choosing to include the church where the hospital is set up. And Jamie mentions to Claire that he feels tremendous guilt knowing that this might be the last time that he speaks to William, and that they left with such anger between them and he's not able to have the last words spoken with William be I love you, and asks Claire that the last words between them are I love you instead of goodbye or good luck. And that is again a callback to many times when these two have parted and Jamie has gone off to war. But this reminded me from season 5 when Jamie is in his red coat and they have this exact moment together and part ways. When he walks away and comes back and tells her it will not be today, again, I think this is just one of those moments that reminds everyone who fell in love with this story in season 1 why we still watch it and enjoy it so much, and to have an overlay of their theme song with this more kind of sorrowful rendition of it was just really beautifully done, and I loved this moment. In the books, Claire actually does have a lot of flashbacks that take place kind of in the thick of this battle and when Jamie is leaving her, and I really liked how they used those throughout this episode, and they were very effective to me. In this flashback, Claire is kind of having this weird feeling wash over her that something's not right, something's different this time. And Jamie doesn't think it's death, but it is in the back of Claire's mind throughout the whole episode, and we get to see here that this has been something stirring in her brain for a while now. Presumably this is the night before. A lot of the dialogue in this flashback scene is pulled straight out of this particular book, Written in My Own Heart's Blood, and I really do love how they reworked it for the show, and I don't want to give too much away about when the actual conversation happens in the books, but it's after Claire is shot. But I think doing it this way is actually very effective and kind of ominous that Claire had these feelings prior to the events of her being wounded. I liked the show decision to do it this way. And then we see Claire come out of her daydream, her memory, and watch Jamie walk away from her once again towards the battle. And we're out of time, so come back for part 2.